if you need to, only if you have like big noise in your background. Okay.
7-year-olds.
Dogs, whatever it is. Okay. Meeting is now streaming live. Well, we're not really a meeting. We're a group of paddlers. And I love these informal talks. It's so fun to have a theme and just chat about things. And I have 4 great, I think, experts in their field, but huge overlap. They all paddle in one way or another, stand-up paddle in one way or another. I kind of, because paddling itself is an activity of cross-training, I mentioned that, but our focus will be on other on-water or off-water activities that that are of interest and help your stand-up paddling. So my name is Kristen Thomas. KT Outside is, I don't know if it's really a business. It's just a name. Outside the Box is how I came up with the name at first, because I'm doing just a bunch of things and I didn't know how to frame it in any other way. But I'm going to share a screen to start with and get us rolling. Can you guys see this?
I can't.
Not
yet.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. So you can't see the screen. Well, later you will. So cross training for SUP. We're going to start with Brent. You can't see yourself perhaps, but you're there, I swear.
Yeah.
Would you do a little introduction?
Sure. My name is Brent Ackland. I'm from Northern Stand Up Paddle, and I'm stuck up here in Canada because the border is still closed. So I've been in the stand up paddle business for, I think this is my 11th year now. Also director of education for PaddleFit. I help Brody out a lot and do a lot of the teaching for PaddleFit. And this is the longest I've actually been at home. Usually I'm down in Florida. At this time of year, I'm also the distributor for Infinity SUP and run the Canadian Infinity SUP team. So all kinds of fitness stuff, all kinds of SUP stuff. It's been my main job for probably the last 10 years now.
Awesome. Thanks, Brent. And thanks for being here. Lindsay.
My name is Lindsay Widener, and I am very new to SUP. I actually started paddling last March, so it's not even been a year yet. Started in quarantine when we moved to Dana Point, and I was lucky enough to kind of get hooked up with our performance paddling group that Kristen and I both belong to, and that's where I met her, which is really awesome. But I've been teaching yoga and been in kind of fitness realms for quite a while, but teaching yoga for about 3 years now, I think. And I really I love yoga, I love fitness, and I love helping people learn how to move their bodies in a new way.
Awesome. And it's been great to have you as a teammate. So she's, there's been a new surge of paddlers, and she was way early at the beginning of the whole new wave of stand-up paddlers.
Awesome.
Jace.
Hey, my name is Jace Porter. I am in Cape Cod, and my background kind of is, as Kristen, is kind of eclectic. It's a variety of many things, but my fitness background started in the Marine Corps. When I was playing Marine Corps rugby. Besides being a Marine, I also played Marine Corps rugby, and with that became, training, and I really got into just trying to make myself better. I got out. I ended up becoming a trainer for horses. So I was a racehorse trainer, and you'd be surprised how much that kind of comes together. And I was in the reserves, and I broke my wrist, and so I couldn't play rugby anymore. I couldn't do a lot of things, but I fell back onto surfing and then into paddleboarding as an alternative sport, something I could do still. And since then, my goal has really been to just use paddleboarding to get people healthier through nutrition, movement, and deep health. So that's where I'm at right now.
I love that. I want to hear more about what you mean by deep health. I love that term. Yeah. Jamie?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Donnelly, and I'm out of Southern California as well, Dana Point, Laguna area. I started paddling back in, I think it was 2005, 2006, when I, during like my Quicksilver Roxy days, I did sports marketing for Roxy, was a team manager, did a bunch of stuff with those guys. And the Roxy marketing department, I'll never forget, in the Quicksilver marketing department, it was kind of like our little secret society. We found out about stand-up paddleboarding. So instead of surfing at lunch when it was flat, we'd sneak out and go cruise around the harbor kind of before anyone down here really did it. And I got hooked from there. And my brother and I, back in 2009, we opened up Stand-Up Paddle Company in Laguna Beach. So it was like a brick and mortar retail store. I think it was like the only brick and mortar besides Blue Line, Jim Brewer's store up in Santa Barbara at the time, at least on the West Coast. So that was an amazing ride. And that's where Kristen and I got really close. And then my ex-husband and I, a few years after that, collaborated, and we founded, sorry, my dog's gonna go crazy. We founded the Paddle Academy, which is a junior development race team out of Southern California. And I can go more into that one later. And then as of most recent, I joined forces with Boga SUP. So Dave Myler over there, Trish and Dave Myler are the founders of Boga. And they went from Boga SUP to Boga Yoga, and then they created the Fit Mat, which we'll talk more so about later. And so I collaborated and helped write the programming for that. And I'm a fitness trainer, certified yoga instructor, and a few other things, but that's most important.
I have to mention my spin teacher, Jamie.
Oh, that's right.
You're
Yeah. Mountain biker.
So Brent, I messed up and yours wasn't up with your face. So there you
There you
have a
go.
little page in here too, but we'll post this in the Facebook group that's SUPConnect Live and KT discussions.
Cool.
So we have lots to talk about. Why even cross train? What types of activities benefit your paddling? How do they benefit them? And then these guys are just full of like tips and resources, and they have their own businesses that some are local, some are online, and that might benefit you. And also there's lots of things, lots of ways they can help you figure out how to do that. Now, this is always the interesting part. How do I stop the share when, there's no cursor on here. Oh yeah, escape. Well, let's get out of here. Let's start with the why while I'm struggling with technology, but what do you want to cross train for? If you're a stand-up paddler at any level from recreational, why cross train just to start with? Why did I even think this was a topic? Anybody?
Like crickets, right?
That's kind of a basic question.
I mean, I think cross training is what you do besides your sport. So if you're an athlete and you're focused on running, cross training is something that you're going to do specifically for kind of breaking it down and making you stronger as a runner outside of running. Something that's low impact on your joints, something that you can sustain. So that's at the athlete level, that's what cross training is. But I think you can break it down a lot more to just everybody. So that's what I think.
I'm catching the important words here. So yeah, definitely breaking it down, learning, strength, I heard mentioned, impact.
I would say too, as an injury preventative type of a thing, kind of building strength in new and different ways in your body, and or like helping to, again, kind of rehab injuries. So if you do have an injury or something, a weakness maybe that paddling brought up, like shoulder things or low back things that pop up. Sometimes I think if maybe our mechanics aren't great, sometimes I think it's not easy, but it's good to add in those extra kind of cross-training things.
Absolutely. And I know some of us have lived through that, Jamie. Those early paddles had huge blades on them. They were really long, and a lot of people were just getting their shoulders really messed up because it was a new sport, new recreational activity, and we're still tweaking equipment to make it work. So super important things.
I think I'm still dealing with a shoulder injury from like 2009. I'll never forget. I borrowed I think it was like a 110 quick blade from Chuck Glenn. It was the Hobie Hennessy race. And I figured, bigger's got to be better, right? Lindsay, don't laugh. And I was like, hey, I'm gonna go, I want to go faster, so I'm gonna use a bigger blade. So I borrowed his paddle, and I still, to this day, my shoulder has never been the same after that 6 miles. So we've learned that like that is not necessarily the case. It's more like stroke efficiency, and as Lindsay was saying, technique for sure. But I would have to go with like injury prevention without fail, and then stand-up paddleboarding is such a repetitive motion, just like cycling. So if everything else around, those muscles aren't strong, you're gonna break down pretty darn quick. And yeah, we saw it. Gosh, most of all, like in the Paddle Academy juniors back in the day, Shea Foudy, and then it was Tyler, all those kids. It was like injury after injury after injury those first 2 years, just because we were paddling 5 to 6 days a week, and then we slowly learned that it was like, you know what, less is more. Let's build a foundation in their lower bodies. Let's get their cores really strong. And I swear, like once we kind of we took a few winters off and had them doing stairs and running and yoga. And then we even had them, we created like a cross-training land program for them. Those kids took off, and they were paddling less. They were paddling sometimes just 2 to 3 days a week. That was it.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the way I use paddleboarding is I get people, because everybody that's coming to paddle for me, for the most part, is not a racer, is not a professional stand-up paddler. They're recreational, and this is the first time, or we're doing some sort of fitness thing. And what happens is they realize like, oh, I have muscles in my feet, and I have, all these other things. And it's all about these body mechanics so that's the cross training kind of, because we're like, all right, this is something different to really work my entire body. But then we take it on the land, break it back down, talking about hip hinges and, how to, focus on balance and different things like that. So you have this cross training of paddleboarding, and then you go and you do cross training to cross train to cross, so yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the most fascinating things is I had to word this carefully, because stand-up paddling is looked at as cross training for a lot of other things, which it certainly is. And you guys have mentioned great words, balance and mobility, balance in a number of ways, not just balance that we need for what we do and proprioception and all that, but balance in our bodies. Because I definitely have found from all the paddling that I do, it's very one-sided, and there's muscles that aren't getting used that affect different parts of my life that I have to be really careful about. Anything else about like the whys? For me, I'm going to throw in as a racer, I want to be faster. And there are things that for me, at least as a slow cadence paddler, strength is important. And that's kind of the important part for me, but I can only push so hard cardiovascularly because it's a strength limiting sport. And I think I learned about that in Paddle Fit. I'd never thought about it that way, but for me, it's definitely strength limiting. That's what poops out on me is my body, not my cardio. But doing cardio, like a spin class with Jamie once a week, years ago, I started doing some kind of cardio, whether it's running or because I needed more of that to be more efficient in a race.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that I would kind of throw in there is I find I don't have a lot of racers up here. I'm a bit like Jace, where we've got a lot of casual paddlers that will jump into races for sure, but I kind of use stand-up paddleboarding more as kind of that cross-training sport in itself. It gets people out, it gets people moving, and usually kind of focus more on technique with the paddling to make someone more efficient. And then you can do your cross training, whether you're in the gym, whether you're like running, riding your bike, to build that cardio or build that strength and build that endurance.
So true. Well, let's go through. So again, I know you guys cross over a lot and you're free to talk about the other things, but let's start, for instance, with Paddle Fit. That has been around for a while.
Yep.
That is, so if you would explain it a little bit and then what that is. So you're both a coach and a trainer for that.
Yeah. So the biggest thing with Paddle Fit is kind of twofold. One, it's going to break it down and give you a really, really efficient technique. So like you said, Kristen, using strength more than cardio. So we're going to give you all those technique cues. So that's the biggest part. And then the secondary part is kind of taking your fitness outdoors, because we can create a fitness class using your components of your paddleboard instead of maybe, take a CrossFit class and take it outside And instead of using the rower or an assault bike or something, you're using the paddleboard going in and out of the waves or doing it all in the water. So that's kind of PaddleFit's kind of two kind of main things. One is technique for sure, and that's the biggest part. And then kind of showing you how to take fitness outside.
Great. And you mentioned the Boga and other the inflatables, Jamie, that became this whole different sort of surprise. They're almost boards, but they're in a different shape, meant to stay in one place. Certainly yoga can be done on them, but what happened, I know you were teaching through one of the chain Lifetime or one of the fitness places with pools, where I've seen them lined up in lanes, and you're doing exercise, but with an addition of being on the water, which.
Right. So I honestly think, like, you know, Dave and Trish, definitely, I think we're one of the spearheading people of the whole fitness mat world now. And there's a bunch of companies that are making them now. So it's they're 8'2", Boga in particular, 8 foot 2 inches by 3 feet wide, and then 6 inches thick. So they're basically inflatable stand-up paddle boards, you know, probably made by the same manufacturers as all the good inflatables. And they have hand handles, they've got foot handles, and these little D-rings on the mats that we attach them to the lane line cable with in pools. And so it basically like mimics being on something like Bosu ball, an Indo board, stand-up paddle board. And so the goal of it is to get everything from like proprioception, you know, more in tune. We suggest that everybody wears bare feet when they get on them, because a lot of people come and they want to wear like their water shoes. But we're like, no, you want to get the bottom of your feet strong. Like Lindsay was talking about, your ankles, your toes, like muscles that you don't normally think about, you know, when you're on a stand-up paddleboard. So we introduced it to Lifetime Fitness back in 2016, and then it just kind of boomed from there. And then gyms and YMCAs like across the country took hold of it. But one thing I will say is that the clients that I had that came to my classes like consistently, you know, 2-3 times a week. I even had 2 almost elderly gentlemen that always showed up 3 days a week. And I got those guys on stand-up paddle boards, you know, 6 to 8 months later, and they were so powerful. They had great technique. Their cores were strong because they had built that foundation, you know. So it was such a genius idea. So, I mean, we worked on everything from knee paddling, you know, we did strength work, we've got resistance bands. There's so much you can do. So strength, balance, flexibility, like you're talking about, Kristen.
And one thing that was mentioned, but I think is one of the biggest whys, is some of you live where you can't go, you know, your lake is frozen, you don't have access to water. So gentlemen are in very cold areas. And so with sometimes cross training is because there isn't an option to actually train on the water somewhere, unless you're, you know, like you said, Brent, you're usually down in Florida, you can't because of the lockdown. So what are you going to do? So there's indoor swimming pools, for instance. So that's kind of, you know, that's the closest you can get really to stand-up paddleboarding if you live in a winter area, to indoor pool. Cool. So Jace, I'm fascinated by Deep Health and like what you have put together through your background, which was so interesting to hear.
Yeah, Deep Health, you know, as somebody who was doing UFC fighting or mixed martial arts fighting, not in the UFC, but, you know, fighting, kayaking, rock climbing, bull riding for some time, my body's broken down quite a bit. So I had to rethink and figure out like new ways to do things. You know, I broke my wrist to 29 pounds in Camp Pendleton while I was in the Marine Corps. And basically I can't bend it, you know, like, you know, my flexion is quite bad. This is about as good as it's gotten. So Deep Health is this, you have different domains, you know, you have your nutrition, you have movement, which is what we're talking about. You have sleep, you have family life, you have everything. And, you know, I think, you know, we still call it, but I think it's turning more into Deep Health. We used to call it mindfulness, right? Just be mindful, but this is a little bit more of breaking it down so that, you know, the reason I'm not doing good at paddleboarding was because I did not sleep well last night. And I didn't sleep well last night because I was stressed. So like all these little things that we have to focus on. Now with paddleboarding, what's amazing is that not only are you getting a workout, but as you know, I think a lot of people have read the book Blue Mind, and kind of get that idea, is that all these chemicals are happening in your head to kind of heal your body at the same time that you're doing physical fitness. And so this deep health of getting back into nature, working out your body, it's all tied together. And so that's what I'm really trying to break it down to everybody.
Well, I love that. And I didn't know that about you, even though you've been on one of these forums before, because I think of you as like the gym guy, like you were going to be about strength, but it is all about integration, and it is all tied together, body, mind, soul. So fantastic. Love to hear what you're doing. So Lindsay, you're nodding your head. Yeah. Talk about your yoga and focusing on, I mean, you're a great athlete. You came into stand-up paddleboarding as an athlete. You have to unmute yourself up in the corner.
I know there was a car that was driving by.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, oh no. Yeah, no, that really kind of resonates with me, what Jace was saying about, being in nature and being mindful. And actually had someone ask me today, like, in a race, like how would you, I mean, I've done one half race, if you will, like, what would you do to keep your mind, like in your mindset, good? Like someone asked me that today, and I was like, it's a great question. I'm going to have to do a little digging, but that's not totally what we're talking about. But yeah,
All tied
yoga
together.
and paddleboarding for me, like coming into paddleboarding, it was a new movement for me. So taking the yoga I knew and trying to kind of incorporate and figure out how to counterbalance those things that, like again, like I said, like low back and shoulders, and how you were saying, like, you found that you were kind of like not hunched forward, but you do use more of those back muscles. So finding that counter of those repetitive motions was something that I started to dig into when I first started paddling. And so that's kind of been my last year, is kind of mixing that and like countering surfing too, because I do a lot of that as well. And I feel like it helps make me more well-rounded as an athlete and as just a person, and it helps you feel better too, because you're not kind of relying on the same muscles all the time. So some muscles get a break while you're working other ones. The other big thing with yoga and paddleboarding, which I think makes them a great complement, is just the balance part. Balancing on water, much more challenging than balancing on land. But for those people who maybe have never been introduced to paddleboarding, practicing on land is a great start, because it's going to make it easier eventually on the water. I think that's my personal belief, but yeah, that's a couple. So.
And it is so interesting. I mean, there's so much we can do on land that's valuable to paddling, and vice versa. I interviewed someone a couple weeks ago who had written a book, Yoga for Paddlers, and she said to this day she's so frustrated because when you get a book published, I guess they choose the cover, and they put her, it's a SUP yoga, and she said, I have nothing against that, and that definitely was part of the book. But the book is about how yoga is so beneficial to you as a paddler. It doesn't need to be stand-up paddle yoga, any kind of yoga. And so it was more about yoga than it was about SUP yoga. And some people thought it was going to be a book about SUP yoga based on the cover. But I think that's just a really good point, is that as much as it's wonderful that SUP yoga, this thing that they didn't think was going to be a thing, that really did catch on, because it's people who maybe had this practice on land and wanted to branch out and wanted to get to the water. Again, a whole nother subject. So it brought all these new people to the water, where, as Jace mentioned, that blue mind thing, you often get, there's scientific research that we get physically addicted to being in, on, and around the water, and how good that is for us in so many ways. But mobility, balance, strength, cardio, flexibility, maybe this is putting you on the spot because they're all important, but what's one that either you really focus on yourself or in how you teach others, or what do you think is one of the most important? Choose one and say a little bit more about it.
That is a hard one, because I'm like,
it is, which to choose.
But it's all for me personally, in my own yoga practice and just in my teaching too, I have begun to focus a lot more on mobility, because I think that that's really important. I mean, for the activities that we do every day, like sounds funny, but like even being able to reach your arm up to get something out of the cabinet, or like as we get older, right, our mobility, if we don't use it, you lose it. That's the old adage or whatever, but it's so true. And for me, yeah, my mobility, like I've always had this kind of rounded forward shoulder thing, and I've been working over the last year or so to kind of, and paddling doesn't help.
It doesn't.
I've been kind of
Let's all
working,
sit up straight.
yeah, I know, sit up straight, roll your shoulders back. Yeah, I've been working to kind of counter that through my yoga practices and through the things that I do focus on, because I think it's so important. Actually, like I look at my grandma, she just turned 90, and she used to be 5'7", and now she's 5 feet tall because her little spine just kind of kept doing this. So, you know, I think it's important to strengthen. It adds a strength, but I mean, that's what mobility is. It's your strength kind of at your end range of your ability to move. So I think that's kind of where, at least in my classes currently, that I've been focusing a lot on. And I think that helps us with our paddling too, because we're able to have better body mechanics, I think, if we're able to have better mobility. So yeah.
I think that's a great word too. I hear that, I would say, more than flexibility these days, mobility, and it's not the same thing, obviously. Yeah. How about you guys? What do you focus on? Jace, again, I think of you as a gym guy, strength.
Yeah,
And strength is important to me, in power.
I'm a cowboy hippie, so I, for me, I have a military background, and the reason I do fitness is to basically beat myself every day, not like beat myself down, but to be better every single day. So I take everything and I'm like, okay, I did this yesterday. Today, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go 1 more mile, or I'm going to do 10 more kettlebell swings, or, I'm just going to focus on breathing through my nose more, So yeah, that's just being better every single day. And that's what cross training really does, is it pushes you and helps you do many things to focus on that one thing that you just want to win at.
Cool. Jamie or Brent, anything to add to that, or any word that resonates with you?
Those are great. Mobility is probably the number one, I would think, as we get older. Maybe not the royal we on this one, but I'm in my upper 40s now, and mobility, if you don't have mobility, you can't do the body mechanics with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm taking care of my mom who had spinal surgery, and she's in rehab at home because she got COVID when she was in rehab. So we're dealing with it every day. It's exactly what you're talking about. So I'm learning a lot about that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jamie, you've been involved with so many different pieces and aspects of this. So we know they're all important, but do you have a favorite, one that's challenged you, one that?
I did want to touch on the blue mind theory thing, and I know that's a whole nother conversation, but it's so funny because when we designed the FitMap programming, when you open the first page of the manual, it's all about blue mind theory, and the connection mind and body, and how the water actually changes the chemistry in your brain. It's incredible. I think that's why we're so drawn to water. Side note. So in terms of like challenges, I look back, again, I always go back to the Paddle Academy kids and how they've gotten stronger, and kind of what, it was really a mental game for them. There's a guy up in San Francisco, his name is Kelly Starrett. Speaking of mobility, I don't know if you guys have heard of him. Jace, I think you would know who he is for sure.
Well, yeah, good.
But you'll have to share your thoughts on him. But he did come down. He talked about, not only we need to be physically strong and have that mobility and functionality in our body, and learn power, focus on power, high intensity intervals, VO2 or your aerobic threshold. But he did talk a lot about the mental game, and that was huge for these juniors. And I learned a lot from him too. So I think for me, the most challenging part of getting stronger as a paddler, as a human, really is that mental game. I love that Jace touched on the breath and breathing and mindfulness. I really do think that that's the foundation of everything, to be able to paddle into your 80s and 90s, like Mickey. Who I saw surfing the other day at Doho.
Oh, love that. Let's all be Mickey Munoz.
I know.
Yeah. So for people who are at home, it's such a strange year. And, you know, the sad part of it aside, there have been some silver linings. Some people have found the outdoors in so many ways, including the water. So we have a lot more people on the water, but also limited in what we can do. And gyms and places where there's crowds have definitely something that's shut down. So maybe something, maybe you could share an exercise, something that's tool, like Jamie, you threw out, I think, Indo boards, for instance, and that kind of that whole balance thing is something you can work on at home. I have one called a Kumo board, I think, that these Florida guys put together. That's an inflatable one, just because the real wood ones make me a little nervous on the roller thing. I like the balance mat thing. At my age, I don't want to break anything. But just something at home, like if you could give somebody some advice for things to work on at home in terms of mobility, balance, strength, cardio, any of it. Some thoughts on that?
Well, we had up here in the first part of the COVID was the biggest explosion I've ever seen of people getting out to paddleboard. So I'd almost give people that if you're not in when you're in season. And off season, we have so many online gyms and yoga studios like that. I would say just get into one of those and get into the community that'll bring you out, whether it's the outdoor community of SUP or one of the indoor at home kind of communities like this. That would be the biggest advice I would give to somebody, is just don't stay home. Don't do it by yourself. You can get out and stand up paddleboard and you're safe distance away from everybody, or you're on these Zoom kind of communities.
Good idea.
Yeah. I do have to say that's the one blessing of COVID is all of the online information that's been released. I know Lindsay's got an awesome YouTube channel. We've been doing it in our garage for the past, 13, 14 months now. Resistance bands are amazing. Those little mini bands, those are great for strength. There's so much you can do, like resources online right now, you know, even just in your garage.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I tell people. One, I'm actually working, so I'm working on programming some paddleboard workouts with the steel mace come summer. So if you're not familiar with that, it's basically a giant bar with a little weight round thing on the top, and it just basically focuses on core strength, which is huge, and I'm excited in focusing on paddling and stuff. But what I tell most people is, one, don't try to do everything that everyone else is doing. Pick one thing, keep it real simple, and get really, really good at it. If you already know some of it, go back to the basics, start over, try to relearn something, and then become an expert at that one thing. And usually if it's a kettlebell, if it's just your body weight, if it's anything, it's going to make you better. And then move on to the next thing, but keep it simple.
Excellent advice. Yeah.
To kind of piggyback off what Jay said too, with like keeping it simple, like I think people sometimes underestimate the power of like just going for a walk and being in nature, kind of going back to that piece for us all. I know you guys in the colder spaces, maybe it's not as much fun to go for a walk, but
Go for a walk if you have one clothes on.
you wear lots of clothes, right? But I mean, Southern California, Florida, like good chunk of the country, at least. Notice that California, Florida, the chunk of the country, but not true. But it's such a simple thing to do, and it's an easy way to kind of connect with your body and to cross train or recover, or just again be outside and kind of clear your mind. That's one of my favorites. I'm lucky I have 3 built-in, I don't know if I want to call them babysitters, my 3 big dogs. They will
They're your people walker.
yes, they will always encourage me to go for a walk every day, and if I don't, they let me know, and they're very unhappy, and so then they make my life a little more challenging. So they going for a walk with a pet or going for a walk with your kids or whatever is, I think, a great kind of just outlet of movement.
Yeah, and definitely have seen a lot more of that. I live at the top of a mountain bike trail and hiking trail, and I've never seen so many people in the 27 years of living in this house going by, which is great in general. There's issues that come with that, like parking and such. And well, we've talked about in the water too, not part of this, but there's issues with these new people to the water who aren't familiar with water and safety and environmental issues about, you know, if you're not being used to being a responsible outdoors person. Stuff is coming up. I'm going to put the link, you guys who are listening, I'm going to try to put it in the different places where this is live. So feel free if you'd like to join us. I know there was a question here from Amy Marshall. If you want to join us and ask it, or else I can ask it. Hey, Trish is listening, Jamie.
Nice.
She said yes. Sharon from Alabama. Cool. Barb from Canada.
Hey, Barb.
Always fun to see who's online. Amy is asking suggestions for really good mobility workouts. Is that easy, or that's kind of a hard one, huh?
That's almost personal specific sort of thing.
Let's start with breathing.
Well, there you go.
Amen.
Start with breathing. If you learn breathing and then move on to your feet and then move on and then just go up.
I love that. And I love that there's such a focus on that right now. I don't know if anybody's like Wim Hof and different, the breathing
Well,
and the different like.
So Jamie, about Kelly, what's funny, because I mean, cross training, you know, we haven't really talked about CrossFit, but you're seeing the original CrossFitters kind of move out of CrossFit and now they're breaking it down. So you got Kelly who's breaking it all down because he's like, we got to focus on everything here to do this CrossFit or HIIT or anything. And so we're in this like whole new decade of, it's going to be all about deep health, mindfulness, and breaking it down. So I'm excited about it. It's going to be good.
It is. It's super exciting that it's all breaking apart to bring it together, because you need to understand the pieces. I'm going to let Bernie in because he found the link. This is fun. I always feel like this is experimenting. Oh, Bernie, you're not going to show us your face. I mean, that is your face. Hi, Bernie.
Come on, Bernie.
Deep health.
It says he's connecting, so I don't know if he can hear us yet.
I'm excited about it. It's going to be good.
It is. It's super exciting that it's all coming together. Oops. Can you unmute yourself, Bernie? You want to ask us a question? Puppies were a big thing. There's Bernie.
Carry on.
No, we just thought it was fun. You want to join us? And
Well, thanks for the invite.
yeah.
Enjoying the conversation.
You want to tell people where you're from?
So I am in frozen Chicago. I've been running. I was lucky to go down to Florida and paddle this last weekend, but that's another story.
Yeah. So you're a runner, and that's interesting that hasn't really come up. I mean, running, I have to say, that's great. You probably do love it. For me, it's not my favorite, but it is the most efficient, straight out the door, inexpensive, doesn't cost a thing. You know, it really is a great exercise and great cardio. I've never been able to run and chat with people. I always thought that would be like my goal, but I give up. It's just good cardio.
It is. Before 2020, I would do about 6 marathons a year, just travel the country, and it would keep me focused and training. But
that brings up an interesting thing. That's fantastic that you're still able to do them. I know in paddling, we have a lot of people who actually were like Jace, really into a little more high impact sports of one kind or another, and maybe their knees or their hips or something, especially lower body, isn't working anymore so well. So paddling has been their lifesaver and their new outlet, which I think is interesting. But some like you, that's great if you can still do both. And Bernie is part of the Midwest Paddle Series. So
Cool.
Are you specifically a race director, or you just help like link them all together?
no, I'm definitely not a race director. We helped the Midwest races come together, and we had a great season last year. Hopefully we'll do a repeat in 2021.
Okay. Very fun.
Carry on.
That's what I get when I throw a link on Facebook. Somebody's going to click it. Good for you, Bernie. Well, you guys, it's been so fun, and there's so much more to talk about. So I want to give you a chance. Just what have you not been able to say? I know these weren't giving you guys really specific workouts, but so many great ideas. I do love the direction of cross training isn't really the word, but just exercise in general and tying it together with body and mind. And that's, I'm so glad that was an important point, I think, that was made here. Any of you like to say anything else before we say goodbye?
I just like the point you were saying, you know, that continuing to do it. The thing I've been calling it, paddleboarding since I started is the sport of longevity. Like, I think that's the coolest idea, that this thing I can do forever is essentially, you know, is what I've wrapped my training, my everything around. I think this year is going to be great. I think we're going to grow a ton. I've seen this online spectrum. I mean, I've seen different paddle companies starting to, you know, grab like Sugar Wad or these other like online apps and gym software systems where they're able to like push out paddleboard exercises. Kind of, I'm doing the same thing. So you're going to get like a workout of the day for paddleboarding. And I know individual gyms and stuff do that, but I think specific to the water is going to be great. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. And I'll put links up for what you guys do, but mention. So SALT is your own company.
SALT,
right?
Yeah, Sustainable Aqua Life Training.
Nice.
Sustainable Aqua Life Training. I love that. And then you're also, I think, one of the founders or the founder of the Cape Cod SUP Club.
Cape Cod SUP Club, and working on, you know, turning Cape Cod into a kind of a paddle, hopefully having yoga, health retreats, paddleboard yoga and other health retreats and just races and the whole thing. So
I love it. Lots going on there.
Yeah.
And Brent, Paddle Fit, we'll be sure to put a link to that. And that's Paddle Fit itself is a training program if you are interested in being a paddle coach, which I think is really we have some other accreditation programs to be a teacher instructor, but this one definitely goes another mile beyond it, I think.
Right.
That even though it's about mechanics and all that, it's much, much more than that. And I remember when, you know, Brody used to run our workouts, it was partly on the water and there was definitely a lot of land stuff going on too.
Right.
Yeah. Neat to do at the same time. Yeah. And Lindsay, Yoga for Athletes is, I know you have a great YouTube channel. We'll put a link to that has a lot of free videos, but you're also doing a one-on-one coaching?
Yep, one-on-one coaching also. So, I mean, if you're local, we could meet in person, but most of it's online because of COVID. So
great. And I love the focus on Yoga for Athletes. I've definitely looked at, you know, there's stretches I'm like, oh yeah, that's a really important one. I really need that one. And reminders of how to do it correctly when you're not in a setting where somebody can, you know, be seeing that is fantastic. And Jamie, my friend, you are always doing 5,000 different things.
You know, things are pretty mellow right now. I'm just in kind of a COVID lull, and it's really nice to be able to breathe a little bit and get back on the water.
Yeah, no, but you're still doing lots of wonderful stuff, and it's amazing that you have been. I mean, you're paddling longer than almost anybody I know, like almost 15 years, right?
Well, we can do that, right?
Yes.
And you were mentioning, Kristen, like the injuries after a while. I've got 2 torn, my knees are pretty much done, you know, but paddleboarding is the one thing, paddleboarding, cycling, that I'll be able to do, you know, through any injury, probably through the rest of the time. So just feel super lucky to have it, you know.
Fantastic. All right, all. Well, it was so wonderful having you. And there is a Facebook page, a Facebook group, I guess it is officially. It's called SUPConnect Live and KT Outside Discussion. Sorry, it's kind of long, but I'm going to post links so you can find all these people, including that little quickie PowerPoint thing that has some pictures and stuff. But thank you all. And hope everyone continues to paddle, of course, but also to find other ways to exercise and to be happy and to tie mind, body, and spirit all together. How's that?
Sounds great.
Take care, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Bye, guys.
Thanks. Bye.